Welcome to the Swole Panda podcast. We have Amy here today. We are online today, and Amy is from Kids Against Plastic, and we're going to dive in to probably the first question, which Amy. So, what inspired you guys to start Kids Against Plastic, and what was the main reason behind it?
Yes, thanks for having me, guys. Kids Against Plastic started nearly 10 years ago now, hence the name Kids and me looking definitely not like a kid anymore. But it was me and my sister, my younger sister Ella, back when we were 12 and 10 years old. And we essentially kind of just came across plastic pollution, particularly back then, but the environmental effects that we were having as humans on the planet. And we kind of just were struck by this sense of urgency that we felt like if we just sat back and went, okay, well, someone's going to solve this problem, it'll get sorted, it's absolutely fine, then there was a high chance that nothing would happen with enough urgency and in time. So we decided that we would try and do our little bit. And so we started taking our own actions just on a really small scale back in 2016. And since then, it's grown into Kids Against Plastic, and we're an official charity today.
That's amazing. No, it's really cool. And there's a lot of it works well with us as well talking to you because obviously we do our belts made from recycled plastic bottles, Reprieve, etc. So yeah, some real synergy there. So when you started, were your parents kind of pro-environment, or was that from you to yourselves?
It was a bit of a mix, really. We were one of the things that kind of motivated us to start the charity as well, alongside sort of wider awareness of the issues, was the UN's global goals had just been
Mhm.
relaunched back in 2015. So not long before we started, and it was actually with our parents that we started to look at them, and they were helping us sort of grasp what are massive issues, massive targets that have been set, and start to see how we could try and make an impact on some of these. And so with them, we sort of chose three of these goals in particular to focus on, which were around responsible consumption, climate action, life below water. And so they almost went on this learning journey along with us. They're both teachers, they're not environmental scientists, or they're not people specialized in climate in particular, but they also nature lovers. They also had an interest and awareness of these issues through what they did with us. And then we've been really lucky that they've been so supportive of the work that we've done since then. I think we absolutely could not have done it on our own. It's pretty crazy to think of like a 12-year-old running a
Okay,
charity.
I know that
So
is
we were
very
really
young.
lucky.
10 and 12. What year are you in 10 and 12? Is that year five? Is it?
Yeah, that would have been, so my sister would have been in year five and I would have been in year seven.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
That is
That's
awesome,
amazing.
really awesome. Do you think a lot has changed in the awareness of recycling and everything in those 10 years?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys must have seen it
We
yourselves as well.
Yeah,
Yes, I mean when we started 8 years ago.
2017.
Yeah, 2017. But even in that period, we have noticed a huge amount of change, and I think the environment and sustainability is much more on the forefront of people's minds than it was sort of 8 years ago, which is good. It's a step in the right direction for sure. There's still a huge amount to be done, but I think that awareness is certainly a starting point for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think awareness is that just crucial first step, really. And we've seen a similar thing. We used to have to start presentations that we did with like telling people why plastic was a problem and what plastic pollution was and what impact climate change was having. And now you just don't really have to do that. Pretty much everyone is at least somewhat aware of these issues, even if they're not really well versed in them. And I think that's quite promising because it means that you don't have to just focus on education. You can start focusing on action, which is obviously
Yeah.
the really important bit to all of this.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think historically, the people have not understood the kind of importance of climate change and the impact that is going to have. I mean, it is, in my opinion, it's the biggest problem the human race is going to face over the next sort of 50, 100 years, unless action is taken, which is what you guys are doing, which is brilliant. And so engaging children sort of in your movement, is that a tricky thing, or is it got easier as awareness has become sort of more widespread?
I think in some ways, working with kids is actually easier than trying to work with, especially teenagers and somewhat to some extent adults. I think the kids that we work with are, kids. So we've got people as young people part of our charity from 6 years old up to sort of upper teens now, like 17, 18. And honestly, kids are amazing to work with as part of our charity because they just have this energy and this desire to actually want to do something and to sort of think that even if they're one individual, their contribution matters. And they haven't almost, I think, been disillusioned and slightly frustrated to the extent that a lot of us get when we get a bit older. And
Yeah.
so they're just so passionate about these issues, and they just have this way of thinking that's like, well, why not start now? Like, what's going to stop me? Why can't I go out tomorrow and just do something on my walk back from school? And I think that we tend to kind of lose that a bit as we get older. And so being able to harness that energy and work with kids, it's not only a really important part of the charity, but I think it's one of those things that really helps to motivate me to keep going, because
Yeah.
it just gives you some hope for the future that there's so many kids and young people who are like this and actually have this next generation hopefully growing up with these principles and these values and this awareness of the planet that we haven't really seen to the same extent before.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, I've actually seen quite a few TikTok videos come up recently of children, they must be younger than 10, just kind of picking up litter throughout the summer holidays. And some of them are getting ridiculous views and exposure, which is brilliant.
Do you have some real success stories that Kids Against Plastic has been involved in over the past 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the aspects of our charity is youth-led campaigns. So something we've started to do, especially over the last few years, is encourage and support our members to start their own campaigns, and then we support them through the resources and platform that we have as the charity. So we've got a few kids who have taken action as part of that. We had Sky Neville, who started a few years ago a campaign against plastic cover mounts on magazines. So she was 12 when she started that, and then it became the Cap Tat campaign to try and stop these essentially pieces of tat that are being given out to kids under this guise of enhancing their play abilities and enriching the magazines, but actually the toys fall apart after about 5 seconds. They're made from this really cheap, unrecyclable plastic, which is made halfway around the world under terrible labour conditions and then shipped back to the UK. So that was the focus of her campaign. And then after a few years of campaigning with her, we created things like a coalition letter with over 50 different environmentalists and activists and media personalities. And she also started a petition which had a good number of signatures. We actually managed to get the publishing industry in the UK to set up a sustainability roundtable to review the plastic production as part of their magazines, which we're now a stakeholder on, which is really awesome. We also have the 1 million litter pick campaign, which was started again a couple of years ago by one of our 11-year-old members, Ali, who's based in Spain, which was around picking up and logging 1 million pieces of plastic litter on the litter logging app that we have as part of the charity. Not obviously by herself,
Yeah.
but to try and encourage this kind of global movement to help collect and track plastic waste, actually create this global picture of the plastic that we're producing and littering worldwide. And that was actually reached earlier this year. I think it was March this year, we reached 1 million pieces of plastic logged on the app, which was awesome. And I think we're now on something like 1.2 million, which is crazy to say that felt so far away not too long ago, and now it's completely smashed the target. So they're just a couple of sort of the main campaigns that we've been running, but there's so many awesome young people part of the charity that are just doing so much work in their local communities, whether it's through politics or their schools or local action groups. It's just really awesome to have this community part of the charity.
And I saw is it the 4 billion chewing gum campaign you guys are doing at the moment? Is that at the moment on?
Yeah, so that's sort of the next campaign that we're part of. We're not actually, that's not our campaign that we're running ourselves. It's part of something run by a company called Nude Gum, who produce plant-based chewing gum. But we're a part of the supporting network for that campaign and are really closely involved in it because, again, it's something that really pertains to young people, because most people don't know that average chewing gum that we buy in the shops actually has plastic in it, and there's now research to suggest that when we chew plastic chewing gum, microplastics from it are getting into our bodies. And obviously we don't know exactly what the effects of microplastics in the blood and the brain and all of these areas that we're finding it in is going to have, but the chances are it's probably not great for us, right? And young people are some of the primary consumers of chewing gum, so obviously this really links to young people. And so a lot of the kids part of the charity, we've had a couple of members in particular, like Isabella and Ellie, who are really getting involved in this campaign to try and just raise awareness of it, because again, it's one of those things that we don't really know. Like, it doesn't say on a chewing gum packet like contains plastic.
Right.
So again, it's coming back to this awareness and just making people aware of what they're putting in their bodies.
That's amazing. No, that's really, really cool. I mean, what is one of the biggest kind of challenges that you've faced kind of raising awareness about plastic pollution with young people and, I guess, adults?
I think that's a tough one. I think that it's hard to constantly have to fight misinformation around some of these issues. I think that's a really big one. I'm sure you guys will have found this as well, but there's obviously a big lobby to try and keep using plastic products. For example, like the oil industry is putting a lot of attention into single-use plastic production at the moment, because it's a really good way to use up all the oil that's not being used as much for energy now, because we're trying to use renewables more. So it's really hard to kind of fight some of the misinformation around that. There's also a lot of like fake solutions, I think, when it comes to especially plastic pollution. Like when we look at things like just swapping out normal plastics for like bioplastics, and then we look at, well, the waste system we have in the UK can't deal with that. This is still producing tons of single-use products. So I think it's really hard to sort of navigate that. But I think almost what's harder than the awareness part of it is, how do we turn people being aware into people wanting to do something? And I think that applies for adults, that applies for young people, teenagers. You know, everyone's got busy lives, everyone's got so many things they're hearing about, so many things that they are interested in. How do we go, look, you're aware of the impact that climate change is having on the planet. It may seem like something that's completely out of reach and is something that should just be dealt with by governments or by companies who have sort of the greatest impact. But actually, unless every single one of us does something about this, we're going to have no chance of stopping it in the next 5 years, for example, that the IPCC have kind of set us. So I think that's the biggest challenge, because that requires a lot more work than just kind of telling people the facts.
Do you think the schools have got better as well in the last sort of 10 years with trying to educate, but also do their own role? Yeah. Because I don't think when we were at school,
that was nothing.
Don't think to recycle
plastic cups at the drinks machine.
Yeah, definitely no.
A lot of single-use plastic from memory.
Yeah, no, my school was the same. Absolutely. I think they're getting better. I think the difficulty currently is that schools are kind of left to their own devices when it comes to environmental stuff. I don't know if you guys were taught much about climate change and plastic when you were at school, but I didn't really have much of
plastic, I would not necessarily like global warming.
Yeah, I mean,
plastic especially
at school, I don't think so, because I did geography at uni. So a lot of my degree actually was on the on climate change, and I had several modules on recycling and stuff. But at school, I think it was pretty.
I think it was quite a while ago for me. During college, we had like the little paper for the water fountain rather than the plastic.
The
little paper cone.
Yeah.
But yeah,
that was their contribution.
That was about it.
And so, what would you, if you were to say to someone, like, what could they do as first steps to reduce their single-use plastic? What would be your suggestion to someone that potentially is not doing anything at the minute?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we do as part of the charity is what we call Plastic Clever.
Okay.
Which is a scheme that we run in particular for particularly schools, but also for different areas such as like cafes, businesses, festivals, all sorts of different sectors. But the principles of Plastic Clever are, we often think that if we want to do something about plastic pollution, we have to completely cut plastic from our lives. And for most people, like including us, and we run a plastic charity, that is just not feasible. Like single-use plastic is absolutely everywhere in our lives. And to try and get people as their first step to cut plastic out completely is just like so out of reach for most people. So we encourage this kind of thinking that's called plastic clever, which is about just being a little bit smarter in how we think about single-use plastics and our usage of them. So it's around looking at in particular what your top 4 most used plastic items might be in your life, and then starting to look at what some of the realistic ways you can cut them out might be. So for example, with the schools initiative that we run, we help schools to do like an audit of their plastic usage, and then from then they can identify their key problem plastics. And this doesn't have to necessarily just be your most used one, because that might be something that's really hard to cut out, for example if it's like medical reasons or if it's a certain item that you rely on. But it's looking at what are the easy wins that you can find straight away, and then how can you build up from there. And once you start to do something around reducing single-use plastic, like taking a reusable cup out with you every time you go out so you don't have to get a coffee in a takeout cup, it actually becomes much easier, I think, than you realize. Like a lot of it's just around building habits, but again, it's that first step that's the really difficult one. So once we kind of break down that first step and we just start to think, okay, well, what's the easy wins that we can all find in our lives, then it becomes a bit more accessible.
Yeah. And I guess it's just being conscious of it as well. I think once you've got that conscious aspect that I should probably not use that single-use plastic, I think from there, as you say, you build a habit and then it kind of just comes naturally.
And what was that plastic? It was plastic cover, did you say? It's called
Plastic clever.
Plastic clever.
Yeah.
And then are you educating the schools to then educate the students with that, or are you going directly to each school and the students at the same time?
A bit of both. Mainly, well, Plastic Clever Schools is now kind of a proper initiative that we run alongside our partner, an organisation called Common Seas. So that's run internationally now. So obviously you can't be jet setting around the world and speaking to schools in Indonesia and Greece and everything. So we have a really good resource deck there for teachers and for students. So we've got one for each to take them through the stages of the initiative and the resources that we have to help them fit it into the school day, the school network, and how it can be led by both students and by teachers. So not putting it all on teachers, to run this, because obviously teachers are already swamped. But how can this be something that's actually led by students and supported by teachers? So yeah, it's been really cool to run, and we've got over 1,500 schools part of it, which is awesome. And yeah, I think, like I was saying earlier, often schools are kind of just left to do something by themselves on climate change, and I think that's really hard. The government have also said that each school needs to have like an eco lead in the school now, but they've not given a huge amount of support to these eco leads or to schools on what that means and what they can do. So hopefully what we're trying to do is just give some simple, accessible ways that students and teachers can start to fit this into school alongside the busy school day as well.
Nice.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's a lot of schools. It's a lot of students when you multiply across the schools. Yeah. And are you guys running any kind of specific campaigns or activities that anyone kind of listening to this, I guess, based in the UK, that can get involved with at the minute?
We have a few ongoing ones, absolutely. We have obviously Plastic Clever Schools, as I mentioned. We also have the youth campaigns that I mentioned still ongoing. So, for example, even though we've reached the 1 million target for the litter picking, it's not finished and it's still ongoing, absolutely. So if you do litter picks regularly in your local area, then you can use our free app to just log the litter that you collect and then put a little pin for your location where you picked it up, and essentially add to this global picture of plastic waste and what we're finding, which I think is pretty cool to see building up and see your contribution to that. We also have, as part of the charity, the CAP Club, as we call it, the Kids Against Plastic Club, which is our youth network in particular. So as part of that, we have over 330 young people already, internationally as well. So we've got members in Australia, Spain, the US, like all over the place. So it's not geographically tied. And yeah, any young person, as I said, the usual age range we have is around like 6 to upper teens in particular. But yeah, any young person with an interest for the environment can really join that. And the aim is that we really support them and create this positive network where kids can kind of feel like they can share their own passions and share their enthusiasms with other like-minded young people, but also start to build some of those kind of skills and confidences for the future. So as part of the network, we have these weekly meetings called the CAP Connects, where we have a 45-minute meeting once a week with as many kids that want to join. It's hosted on Zoom, and as part of that, we have games, we have activities, we have all sorts run by other members, run by me and my sister, which are themed around environmental issues, but also more widely on things like cultures of different countries of kids that we have part of the network. What are the different wildlife that we see at different places around the world? So not just focused on the doom and gloom of environmental issues, but kind of more around celebrating our planet. So yeah, that's free to join for any young person. And as part of that, we also have something new called the Action Academy, which is a course, sounds like way too boring, but essentially just this online set of videos and resources to help young people build some of these skills associated with change making. So like, how do you give a presentation to your classmates at school? Like, how do you start to do public speaking, writing for a purpose, like writing letters to head teachers and local MPs, and then also video making, because obviously that's such an important part now of the world we live in. So yeah, that's also part of the CAP club, and also alongside it as well. So we've got all sorts of bits and
Amazing.
pieces.
There's a huge amount of resource as well.
Yeah,
yeah, it's so good.
I love the collecting plastic and logging that.
That's so
cool.
So you've got, I mean, that's great because you've got the metrics, but it's also a bit like, I guess, a bit like a game for children to, you know,
absolutely.
You're logging it. So are you able to map that data of where the most plastic has been collected geographically as well?
Yeah, so it's all mapped. So it's built on map data.
Yeah.
That's kind of a key part of it. So yeah, it allows you to, well, I mean, I find it useful because it allows me to keep track of what I'm collecting as well, when I'm not having to keep like a mental tally of how many pieces I'm on. But yeah, I think what's really cool about it is you can view the map on our website of all the litter picks that have already been done. But if you zoom into different areas of the map, the kind of metrics for the types of items collected and the amount of them collected adjust to the area that's kind of focused on your screen. So you can see that for example, in the UK, we might have a different picture of plastic waste to, for example, Spain, where there've also been lots of litter picks. And looking at like, well, there might be way more cigarette butts there, or there may be like way more plastic bottles or cups or wrappers, or like, on beaches, what are the types of plastic we're finding washing up there in particular. So I just think it's super cool to see that, because it's
that data
and get that big picture,
No, that's really cool. Really, really cool. I like that. Yeah.
And how do you guys collaborate with other organizations to sort of get the word out there? Is it is it stuff like this, Instagram?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, the map is in collaboration with an amazing mapping agency called Esri, who have really supported us in building that platform. We have Plastic Cover Schools with Common Seas. But yeah, we just kind of do as much as we can with as many people. I think we always see collaboration as such an important part of what we do, because I think it's slightly strange when you have environmental organizations that are like really possessive of what they do and sort of going, well, this is our campaign, this is our issue, this is what we're working on, because we're never going to solve these issues unless we all collaborate. I think, to me, that's something that's so important and kind of obvious. And so yeah, we try and do as much as we can with as many different organizations. We've supported like with different campaigns like the Big Plastic Count with Everyday Plastic and Greenpeace, who were super awesome. And yeah, with like different organizations through things like Instagram, through different campaigns. So yeah, we're really lucky.
And do you collaborate with like businesses like Swole Panda who are maybe focusing on the environmental aspect? You collaborate with kind of businesses like that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have some key pillars part of the charity of like what is a good collaboration to us, and it's not like business and commercial enterprises like the bad guy. I think that it's really important to celebrate businesses who are doing good. So like I said, we're also doing the campaign with Nude Gum, who are a business, but obviously what they're doing and what they're trying to achieve is really important, and we've all got to celebrate the businesses who are doing good and who are trying to then try and like encourage more wider sustainability action in the business sector as well. So yeah, I think that's a really important part of it as well.
No, awesome. And the nice thing is there are so many smaller businesses now starting up or have started over the past 5 years with the environment as a focus rather than just profit, which is, yeah, it's definitely a move in the right direction for sure. So what kind of, I guess last couple of questions, what changes have you seen in like the public attitude towards climate change and plastic? I mean, I guess we kind of covered this, but over the past kind of 5 years, has there been a significant shift, you feel?
Yeah, I think like we were saying, I think the awareness part of it, really big difference. I think, yeah, I think I've also seen when it comes to stuff like climate denialism, I think I've seen a lot of people start to become more aware of climate change, like even within my own networks, within like my family and my friends, seeing people actually start to recognize that, okay, maybe this is actually something serious going on and we should give this a bit more attention and yeah, a bit more awareness. But I think, yeah, more widely as part of that, I think we've also seen like a rise in stuff like climate denialism, like I was saying about plastic with like the oil usage, but there's a lot of focus given, especially coming from like the US, around how we can start to like take away from some of these issues and diminish them and start to make them seem like they're a bit of a joke or something created by science to scare us all, which is obviously ridiculous. So it's kind of like some good and some bad. I think generally on the ground with like the public that we work with, people are much more aware and much more keen to do something. But then I think we almost see this weird like parallel world almost with like politics and commercial like big business, which is kind of going backwards almost in some ways with climate change. Like you see, you know, companies like BP, for example, who were already a little bit dubious in their environmental credentials and what they were committing to, but rolling back on their renewable commitments and stuff. And it's just like, how in the last 5 years have we managed to, in the most important time possible on climate change, go backwards? So I think, how do we kind of pair those two things up and go, okay, well, more people are becoming aware of this. How do we then use that to help to keep corporations and governments accountable to the stuff that they've committed to and should do?
And do you see that change happening from kind of a top-down level from government, big corporations, feeding down to the general wider public, or do you see the general wider public maybe changing the opinions and views of organizations and government, or is it a combination of both, do you think?
Yeah, I definitely say combination, because I think it's very, very difficult to completely drive grassroots change on a high level. I think you can do it on really specific areas, which is what we've tried to do in the past. But it's such like a massive machine that it would take it takes a lot of pressure and a lot of action to completely change the way that, for example, a government will function. But at the same time, we can't also rely on and wait for governments and businesses to do the work and to go, okay, well, we're just gonna, I'm sure they'll do something. Like we only have a few years left. I'm sure they'll take this seriously at some point. Like, I think that is ineffective, but also something that really feeds into this like eco anxiety that so many of us are feeling. So actually trying to take some agency and think, okay, well, I'm not gonna rely on them completely. I'm gonna try and do what I can in my life to make my own changes, but also then use that to put some pressure on those higher up.
No, that's great, and I agree with that.
And if you had sort of some last words to leave to our listeners, what would you say, and what would you advise them to do of the input of, you know, driving the importance of plastic recycling, and also just what would be your one massive takeaway that is like, just please do this if you're not doing anything?
Oh gosh, that's a difficult one to end on.
Sorry.
I think no, it's a good question. I think, I think what I would say is that we often view sustainability as like this add-on to our lives. Like we think that if we want to do something for the planet, we need to do this extra thing on top of our busy days to then be sustainable. Like I will put aside this amount of time to go for litter picks, or I will do this, watch this alongside everything that I do in my life. And I think that sustainability is something that has to become part of our lives, not only to be effective, but also to make it manageable. So I think it's about thinking about how sustainability can work for you. So whether that is, like we were talking about, using reusable items when you go out for a drink or go to the shops, and making small changes like that, or buying more sustainably from smaller businesses like you guys, and looking at how you can swap out the items that you have in your everyday lives to people who are trying to do good and who are doing good through their products. Or whether it's through fitting advocacy and wider environmental action into your life as well. So whether it's looking at what environmental networks are in your community that can be a part of the work that you do, and how you can kind of fit it into the job that you do, or just kind of see how you can link it into your local life and your community. So I think that is what makes sustainability something for everyone, because it's not a one size fits all approach. It's how you can do something that works for you, and I think that is
changing the mindset step by step, small differences that end up being a big difference.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you so much for coming on the call today.
And it's amazing what you guys are doing.
Absolutely.
Keep going, because it's an amazing story.